I want to warn you guys ahead of time. This is probably not going to be a very good sermon. And here's why not. I was all amped up. It doesn't take much to get me fired up. And I was all amped up to be here on Sunday morning because I get to speak, because we all know, like, finally Jeff is out of town and we get a break from him. And so I get to come up here, and we're in the middle of a phenomenal series based on one of my favorite movies, the movie Divergent, right? And since our family loves that movie, I was all psyched about being able to speak one of those messages. And that movie, there's this great scene, by the way, in this movie, because in this movie, in the movie Divergent, there is this fictional society that takes place, this futuristic society in Chicago. And the entire society is divided according to these factions, and the factions are based on a set of virtues, and so you lived in whatever faction you chose. You were with them for the rest of your life. That's who you lived with. That's what you did. It was everything you were. And there's this one scene near the end of the movie Divergent that there's this guy named Ford. He's one of the stars, and he's got his shirt off, and he's got tattoos all over his back. And Tris, who is the star of the movie, says to him, "Hey, wait a second here. Why do you have tattoos of all of the factions on your back?" To which he has a classic response. He says, "Because I don't want to be good in just one of these areas. Like, I don't want to be only brave or only generous or only kind. Like, I want to be good in all of these areas." And so Jeff and Stephen and I got thinking, man, that sounds kind of like the fruit of the Spirit from Galatians chapter 5, right? Galatians 5 says the fruit of the Spirit, verse 22, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And so we got thinking as pastors that the fruit of the Spirit, that's kind of like, we don't want to just go, you know what, yeah, I'm not a very patient person. Maybe I'm not very kind, but you know what, I'm a joyful guy, and I'm pretty gentle with people, and so I feel okay about where things are right now. No. We aspire to grow in all of these areas. And so we thought, what a cool sermon series. And then I, of course, was so excited because I got the topic of goodness. And I was all excited about this sermon until someone came out 2 weeks ago and popped my balloon and said this to me. Well, isn't kindness and goodness kind of the same thing? Because Jeff spoke on kindness last week, and I said, no, you got it all wrong. Because kindness is how you treat other people. Goodness is about who you are. Goodness is about your integrity. Goodness is about your character. Goodness is about your personal holiness, right? And so I had this great sermon plan, and I had this awesome opening illustration. I was going to talk about, like, my father, because I was going to talk about the fact that only God is good. Like, we are not good. We're just not. And so I was going to talk about the fact that when I was in high school, middle school, I would walk into the house, I'd be hanging out with my friends, I'd come into the house, and every time I'd walk in, and my father would say, "Hey, how'd it go?" And I'd say, "Oh, we had a good time. How you doing?" I'd say, "Oh, I'm good." And my father would look at me and would say, "No, you're not. Only God is good." And it used to drive me nuts because it was true, right? And I hated my father's right, but he used to say it all the time. And he was right, because in Mark chapter 10, there's this guy that walks up to Jesus and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to..." And Jesus interrupts him and says, whoa, verse 18, "Why do you call me good? Don't you know that only God the Father is good?" Right? Those were the words of Jesus. And so my father used to do that to me, and I used to hate it. But now, I'm the parent, right? It's called the circle of parenting, so I get to do the same thing and drive my friends and my kids nuts. And I had this great opening illustration, and I was going to talk about how we are not good people. Because at the core, we are fundamentally flawed. We are sin-filled. We are not good. I was going to talk about the fact that you can't get to heaven based on your goodness, because compared to God, our righteousness is like filthy rags. That only by God's grace can we have any level of integrity or personal holiness at all. And that was the sermon. It was going to be great, and you were going to love it, and we were going to get high fives and hugs afterwards, and you were going to give me a raise, and it was going to be awesome. And then I made the mistake this Monday afternoon of opening up the Bible and digging into the text. And rather than just assuming it meant what I wanted it to mean, I looked at the context and I looked at the Greek language, and here's what I found out. Depressingly so. That the word Paul uses for goodness in Galatians 5:22 is the word agathosune. Isn't that a wonderful word? Agathosune. Say that with me. Agatha sune. That was pathetic. Say that with a little oomph. Agatha sune. And agatha sune, the word Paul uses in Galatians chapter 5 for kindness, that word that's there in the Greek language, for goodness rather, means almost the exact same thing as the word he uses for kindness. In other words, in Galatians 5:22, kindness and goodness are the exact same thing. So what I'm telling you is, Jeff already preached this sermon last week, and he did a good job. And then the scumbag leaves town and leaves me up here to look like an idiot and preach the same sermon all over again. So I want to apologize ahead of time to you if you sit here bored. You probably have time if you want to leave and go to a good church and hear a good sermon from a good pastor. Will you pray with me this morning? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I got that out of the way, and now I have to get something else out of the way while we're confessing. As you know, I have been vocal about this. I am a New England Patriots football fan. You can go ahead and cheer and clap and get that all out of the way right now. And so I knew, because you know that, and we've talked about that in the past, that we were going to have to deal with Deflategate up front and just get it over with right away. First of all, we're going to get biblical about Deflategate because I'm a Patriots fan, and this week Roger Goodell brought the hammer down on the Patriots, right? Like 4-game suspension and $1 million fine and 2 draft picks, and so he came down pretty hard on my team. By the way, how many people, show of hands if you were here last week? Show of hands. Okay, because if you weren't here, you missed something really cool, because during the announcements portion of the service, if you were here, you remember we got to play America's favorite game, Gateway Bible Church's favorite game show here at church. You missed it if you weren't here. It's called Name That Mother, right? Because it was Mother's Day. And so what we did is we had the name of 5 famous moms, right? And we had a list of facts associated with those moms. And what I did is I would read the fact, and you would get to guess who was that mother. And if you guessed the name of the mother correctly, my goodness, you walked away with a prize. And so we had 5 people that walked away as rich can be last week, and some of you missed it. Okay, but here's the deal. That was on Sunday morning, right? Well, the Saturday night before, I was sitting on the couch at night, and I was getting my list ready, and I was doing research and trying to find out some cool moms. And so I got my list together. I got all the facts lined up. And Emily, my wife, was standing over by the sink. And so I turned to her when everything was done. I said, "Sweetheart, would you like to know the names of the 5 moms I picked for tomorrow?" And she said, "Well, why would I want to know the names of the 5 moms?" I said, "Sweetheart, because then you'll get all the prizes, right?" To which she said, "But Jacques, that would be cheating." To which I said, "The Patriots won the Super Bowl, didn't they, right?" That's kind of how we got it. So anyways, back to Deflategate. Wasn't it incredible this week to kind of listen to the news, all the media, the talking heads and the former players and current NFL players talking about this and throwing stones at the organization and my goodness, good riddance. And everywhere I went, in coffee shops and restaurants and grocery stores, everywhere I was this week, people were talking about Deflategate. And they didn't have a lot of good things to say about my team. As a matter of fact, the comment I heard more than any other was this. And just show of hands if you heard this said about the Patriots this week. They got what they deserved. Well, show of hands if you heard somebody say that this week. They got what they deserved. Maybe so, maybe not. But it got me thinking. Because the more I heard people say that, the more I got thinking that me as a follower of Jesus Christ, that you and I as Christians are the benefactors of getting what we don't deserve. I mean, you think about it, when God had every right to lower the boom on us, when he could have heaped all of his wrath and all of his punishment and all of his anger at us, instead he put it on his Son so that you and I get what we don't deserve. And so as followers of Jesus Christ and Christians, when we hear stories and we see people stumble, we look at it from a different perspective. And by the way, we're going to get back to Deflategate in a minute, but I want to go to the text in Galatians 5:22 for a moment, because in that text, Paul says the fruit of the Spirit is goodness. The fruit of the Spirit is goodness. And so we're not going to make the same mistake I made earlier and just assume that this is what goodness means. And so when you look at the word goodness, the word there is, we said it earlier, agathosune. Say it with me again. Agathosune. That word, if you were to open up your Bible and it were to be literally translated, which I wish these people would do, to save me the embarrassment I usually run into, would literally say this: goodness for the sake of others. That's what that word literally means. Goodness for the sake of others. That's why it's very much like the word kindness. So it doesn't mean personal integrity. It's not talking about holiness. It's not talking about that. The word literally means goodness for the sake of others. And so, the fruit of the Spirit, someone who is controlled by the Spirit, influenced by the Spirit, under the direction of the Holy Spirit, therefore, is someone who produces actions, good actions for the sake of others, for their benefit. If we were to make a distinction, we would then say that someone with agathosune will act on behalf of others. Someone without agathosune will almost always act on benefit of themselves. So here's the question. Do you have agathosune? In other words, is your life marked by an uncommon, unnatural, unparalleled pursuit of meeting the needs of other people? What do your actions say about you? Do the decisions you make, the time you spend, the resources you have, most of the things you do they benefit you? Or do you live for the benefit of others? Friends, that's not a bad question. That's a good question. That's a godly question. That's a question we're asking here today. And that's why, by the way, when I hear about Tom Brady, when I think about any pro athlete, when I think about any famous singer, actor, songwriter, any politician, anybody, I think of them the same way. I think about a car salesman or a Starbucks barista or an auto mechanic, because I've realized this. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your upbringing was. It doesn't matter the size of the house that you live in, the bank account you have. It doesn't matter your fame or your level of obscurity. It doesn't matter any of those things. If you don't know Jesus, if you are not controlled by the Spirit, if we are not in step with Him, all we're going to do is act for the benefit of ourselves. And so I don't look around, and that's why Deflategate, friends, it doesn't surprise me. A husband cheating on his wife doesn't surprise me. A couple cheating on their taxes doesn't surprise me. Someone lying to their boss at work doesn't surprise me, because without God's Spirit, we're going to do what we naturally do. We'll have no agathosune. We will almost always act for the benefit of ourselves. Does that make sense to any of you out there? By the way, anyone who has kids, you know this already, right? Because we come into this world, we're agathosune free. Like, it's all about us, right? You want milk, what do? You cry until you get it. If your diaper's full of poop, you wiggle and squirm and cry and fuss until they change your diaper. Right? That's kind of how it works. Everything is about you. When you don't get what you want, you throw a fit. Parents, you've seen this, right? When I was a kid, by the way, my younger brother, he threw the kind of fits that were, they were unbelievable. Like, pick up your lawn chair, get some popcorn, and watch him. It was unbelievable. Because what he used to do is he would clench his fists like this and start shaking, and then hold his breath until he turned blue, and he would literally black out. The first time it happened, my mom blacked out, like, oh my goodness, it was freaky. And he used to do this all the time. Anytime he did not get his way. My brother Paul, that's what he did. And that's what you and I sometimes do when we don't get our way. We throw our version of a fit. Kids do it all the time. They don't like the word no, right? Have you noticed that? When we brought Thad home from China, by the way, in November, and Thad's a pretty cool kid. He's having his first surgery on May 28th, so be praying for Thad. And we love Thaddeus, but we learned very quickly that Thad has an aversion to the word no. As a matter of fact, he was so spoiled by the foster home. And here's why. If you were to come to our house, if you were to watch Thad walk from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs, by the time he gets there, he's so out of breath. His color has turned completely blue. I mean, anything he does, if he runs across the living room to get his, like anything he does, after about 3 minutes, he looks like a Chinese Smurf, for crying out loud. Like, it's cute. But the foster home nannies would see this, right? When he didn't get what he wanted, he would get all mad, he would get all bent out of shape, they would say no to him, and he would stop, and he would throw a fit and turn blue, and they got scared. They were going to kill him, and so what do? They just gave him what he wanted. So that's his response, that's what he does. And then he moves into our house, and he finds out fits get you nothing. No, it does not work. For the first 3 months, every 15 minutes, that dude was in tears. I'm not joking, the girls, Thad's crying again, and we would just learn to ignore it, but that's what kids do. Because kids notoriously, they come to us agathosune free, that they're not acting for the benefit of others, they're extremely interested in the benefit. They will go through extreme lengths to get what they want. Here's how it plays out in my house, without fail. If I were to yell out in my house, hey guys, let's get in the van, we gotta go. Here's what would happen. Either Dryden or Soleil will yell out these words. I'm in the front seat. Just like that, right? And when the other kid hears that, it is on. They will throw furniture. They will run through glass. They will trample little Chinese people because they're getting that front seat. It was like Godzilla, for crying. Like, they will get there. Right? That's what they do. I'm not kidding. Like, at the expense of it, they are not interested in what somebody else wants. They want what they want. It happened like a week ago. We were out catching turtles and something, and Soleil got all dirty. She was covered in mud. And so we got home, and I'd forgotten to pick something up at the store, and so she was upstairs changing, and I let out the call. We got to go back. Everybody in the van, right? And so boom, boom, boom. They're all running towards the van, right? And I'm extra slow because I got to get the oxygen tank back out for Lily and do all this stuff. So I go to get that. By the time I get to the garage, they're already in the van. So I'm like, this is great. I have awesome children. So I walk into the van, right? And Soleil's in the front seat, and I sit down, and I'm turning the car on, and I'm just about to go when I look over. She's still in her underwear. Like she was not going to lose that race. We will go to extreme lengths to get what we want. And because kids, right? If you don't believe me that that's what kids do, just try making one. Well, try. There you go. Just try having one. Steve and Rihanna, the other comment was for you guys, for crying out loud. Jiminy Christmas. Well, the sermon's ruined already, right? But that's what we do. Like kids, they're notorious. And so that's the deal. That's what I have to work on with my kids more than anything else. I got to sit down with them and say what God is after. What God wants, what God is looking for in us is people who care more about the needs of others than needs about themselves. And I feel like I have to try to sear this in my kids because they don't yet quite get it. And it's not just kids, by the way. It's adults too. It's adults true. We struggle with this all the time. Here's an example of how it works in our home. And this is why we probably need marriage counseling. We discovered a few years ago in our marriage that I am quite, and Emily will testify to this, I'm territorial about my food. And so a few years ago, this is kind of how we discovered this was a real issue, is the kids were in bed early and we said, we're going to watch a movie, right? And so movies and snacks, they just go hand in hand, right? And we'll watch them in bed and it's our date night. And so this is great. I'm up there, we're getting the movie ready. I'm going to go down and get a snack. And I'm not a chocolate guy, I'm not a candy guy, I'm a real person. I'm a potato chip dude, right? Oh my goodness. And there are so many great flavors, and I had some barbecue potato chips just waiting for me. So I got the chips out and I poured myself a bowl, and I carry the bowl up to our room, and Emily's in bed on her side of the bed, and I'm in my side of the bed, and I take the bowl, and this gentleman who are married, this was the mistake I made. I took the bowl and I put it between Emily and I on the bed while I reached over to scramble to get the sheets all so I'm nice and cozy. Out of the corner of my eye, an arm reaches out before I can swat it, grabs a potato chip and starts crunching. Now, I could go off on a tangent on the whole crunching thing alone, but that's for another sermon altogether. But I turned to Emily like, what are you doing? You took my chip. And she looked at me and she said, listen, if you wanted a bowl of chips, I would have gotten you a bowl of chips. She said, I didn't want a bowl of chips. I only wanted one chip. I said, sweetheart, that was the exact amount of potato chips I wanted. If I wanted one less potato chip, I would have put one less in the bowl. So here's what I did, being the mature husband I am. I took the bowl, threw the sheets off, went downstairs, grabbed the potato chip bag, opened it up, grabbed one more chip, and put it back in the bowl where it belongs. And then I go back up to the room, and this time I've got this Heisman Trophy tucked under my arm because she is not getting near them. And I learned through that experience, I'm agathosune deficient. But in more serious matters, friends, not just the comical ones like that, in critical areas, I promise you, left to myself, if it were all up to me, if it were only me operating based on what I have the capability to do, I would do what I wanted to do and ruin relationships in the process. I have that capability in me. I remember as a high school kid and then a college kid and a young adult, I remember going through the battles that young adults go through. And I learned very early on I'm a sexual being. And the struggles that young men and women go through with that in our culture are unbelievable. And I figured out that pretty fast. I had these desires, and what do I do with them? And I would find myself, like in college, I was in relationships. Relationships, maybe even with a girl that I knew I had no future with. But man, I thought she was cute, or I thought it'd be fun. And so I'm with this girl, and we're hanging out. And all of a sudden, I find myself making decisions to do things that only benefit me. I mean, I would push for sexual interactions and touch that was wrong. And it was my selfishness acting out. I did it because it felt good, and it's what I wanted. You see, I was lacking agathosune. I wasn't controlled by the Spirit. I was dominated by my selfish desires, and I let them determine my actions. And some of you here today, that describes you. Describes your life. You do what you want. You're the boss. I mean, if it's sex you want with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, you have it. If it's music or these videos or no matter what the content, you're going to watch them because by golly, you're in charge. You lie. If it benefits you, the decisions you make, the money you spend, the places you go, it's all to benefit you. Your life exists for you. You're agathosune deficient. And by the way, it's not like I blame you. Okay, I'm not up here like, hey, finger pointing like, look at you, look, you're horrible, and I'm not. That's not the point. I don't think I'm one iota better than you. As a matter of fact, in a very weird way, I realized something. You're just doing what's natural. And as a matter of fact, I would venture to say that most of the people in this room, to varying degrees, right now, if you were to be honest and you were to sit down and were to do confession time, you would say, I'm in the middle of a goodness battle here. And by the way, Paul, when he wrote this in Galatians 5:20, he wasn't pointing the finger either. That's not what he's trying to do. That's not the spirit of Galatians 5:22 at all. As a matter of fact, Paul is teaching out of his own personal experience. Listen to what Paul says in the book of Romans chapter 7 about his battle for agathosune. And see if you find yourself right smack in the middle of the same things. Verse 18, Romans chapter 7, Paul says this. He says, I know this, that nothing good lives in me. In other words, remember we said it's not natural, it's not normal. The goodness comes from outside of us. Paul says, I acknowledge there's nothing on my own good inside of me because inside of me is my sinful nature. He says, therefore, I have the desire to do what's good. He said, but I can't even carry it out. In other words, he said, I know it's right. It's not like I'm an idiot. I don't need somebody walking up to me and saying, you know, what you're doing is wrong. Like, I know that, but there's this thing inside of me, I'll find a way to do the wrong thing that I don't want to do. Even when I'm trying to do the right thing sometimes. Paul says it's so frustrating. Here's what he says. He's like, because not only do I cannot carry it out, he said, for what I do, what I end up doing is not the good I want to do. No, it's the evil I don't want to do in the first place. He says, for some reason, I keep on doing this. Then he says, verse 20, now if I do what I don't want to do, it's no longer me that's living. It is sin that's living inside of me. It's sin living inside of me. It's like it's taken over. I'm a slave to sin. That's what he says early on. It's like I got a different owner here than I should have in my life. Verse 21, he says, so I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. Like when I wake up in the morning, there evil is. When I get in the car, there evil is. When I hang out with my friends, there evil is. When I'm on my own, there evil is right there next to me. For in my inner being, he says, I delight in God's law. And when I talk to people that are in the middle of sin and they're struggling in their goodness battles or their life exists for their own benefit, and they look at me and they say, but I really do love God. I really do. You know what? I believe them. And Paul says, I delight in God's law, but yet I see another work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner. He's like, I can't get out of this. I'm like a prisoner within my own body. And then he throws up his hands and he says this. It's almost like a parent, like exasperated with their kids, like, what a wretched person I am. I can't even live with myself. And so many of us, if we were to be honest, that's kind of how we feel about our walk with God. Is there any way to have goodness at all? That's what he's saying here. And look what he ends verse 25 with. He says, thanks be to God through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Friends, there is only one road to Agathosune. There is only one road to Jesus. In other words, it's like Paul's saying this. He's saying, let's have an honest moment here. There's no sense pretending, no bother faking. There is a battle that is raging over you, over me, over everyone in this room. We will, mark my word, Paul says, you will be controlled. Every one of us will be controlled either by the Spirit or by our desires. It's going to be one or the other. The question this morning is who's in control? It's really the only question that matters. Because, by the way, make no mistake about it, this Romans 7 passage, it's not an excuse to sin. Because I've heard that text taught that way. Like Paul said, hey, I struggle, we all struggle, I want to do good, I just screw up anyway, so it's not that bad. Like, no. In Galatians 5:22, when you read that text from Paul, the fruit of the Spirit is this and this and this and this. Right before there is another list where Paul says the fruit of the acts of the sinful nature are obvious. Lust, greed, discord, jealousy, anger, rage, drunkenness, all that kind of stuff. And then Paul says this, if those are the things that generally characterize your life, you don't get in to the kingdom of heaven. No, it's not an excuse for us to say, it's just a little bit of sin, it's not that bad. Oh, well, we all struggle, we're all flawed. The only difference between us and those who don't know Jesus, the only thing that's different about us Christians is we're just forgiven, that's all. You've seen that bumper sticker, haven't you? You've seen how many? Not perfect, just forgiven. Show of hands if you've ever seen that bumper sticker. Here's what I want you to do. The next time you're at a light and the person in front of you has that bumper sticker, slowly take your foot off of the brake and hit the accelerator as fast as you can. Like ram that sucker. Like that's kind of how I don't really do that because that would cost you money. There's a better option. This is what I like to do. I become like a secret agent, like a spy for Jesus, right? Like they go straight, I go straight. They turn left, I turn left. They turn right into Walmart, I turn right into Walmart. And then I wait for them to go into the store. And then I go quietly and I peel that sticker off and I roll it up and I throw it in the trash, right? Vandalism. Stealing for Jesus. Like that's what I want you to do, right? No, don't do that. But in all honesty, I hate that bumper sticker and here's why. I hate it because it's only partly true. I mean, there's some truth there. We are flawed. We do sin all the time. We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And we are forgiven. In and of themselves, those little statements are absolutely true. But if you're going to write one thing down and remember one thing, it's this, friends. Being forgiven is not the only difference between those who follow Jesus and those who do not. Between those who are Christian and those who are not. Because key people, friends, controlled by the Spirit, have agathosune all over them. They're filled with goodness. They can't help it, friends, because agathosune happens. We can't help it because it's God who's in you. You see, we don't get credit for it. It's not because we're great. We're not. It's God inside of us. And so the fact is this, friends, if you are controlled by the Spirit, if you are agathosune filled, your life will look drastically different from people who are directing their own lives. So my question is this: how different is your life from those around you? Because goodness stands out. Because agathosune is visible. Remember at the beginning we talked about the definition of agathosune, literally translated goodness for the sake of others. Here's what Jesus said in Matthew 5:14. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." In other words, everywhere you go, there is darkness. You can't even see it maybe all around you. There are marriages that are falling apart in the homes in the suburbs. People are tragically depressed. Like, there is darkness all around you. You are the light of the world. You must be visible. You must be different. And then he says what? He says, a city on a hill can't be hidden. Like, that's why it's on a hill. So that miles away, people go, oh, there it is. We can run to that city. And in your life, friends, you are that city. From miles away, people ought to be able to look at you and say, I've got a problem. I know that person. I'm going to them. Because there's something different about them. Agathosune stands out. Jesus went on to say, guess what? No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. Like what a donk would do. Like, they don't do that. No, if you're in your house and the lights go out because there's a thunderstorm and you light a candle, you don't go, okay, somebody get the bowl. Try and get the bowl and we're going to cover this thing. Like, then what would happen? They would be scared, they would cry, they'd be fumbling and bumbling and tripping all over themselves. Friends, all over our world, in our neighborhoods, in our streets, people are fumbling and bumbling and tripping all over themselves. And we've got our lights under bowls. And then he said this, so let your light shine before men, so that they will see your agathosune. They will see your good deeds and praise the Father in heaven. Friends, divergents are different. And they're different because they're visible. And there's visible because there's a power in them that separates them from those who aren't in Jesus. So how visible are you? How visible are you? Do you possess spiritual qualities that separate you, not because of what you're doing and how great you are, because of how good God is and how good He is in and through you? By the way, I experienced goodness the other day. I had a face-to-face experience with agathosune about 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, the room behind where we're in now, where our grade school kids meet, we came in on Sunday morning and it was filled with props and setting, and we're like, what's going on here? And so Rhianna and Kelly did a good job and they adjusted, and so we put the kids in the room down the hall. But that Sunday afternoon, I emailed Lisa Gosselin, who our school works with, and she's a good friend of our family. And I said, Lisa, what's the deal? We showed up and there was like props and setting in there. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you guys. The school play is going on, and so yeah, they've got their stuff. And so I emailed and said, well, how long? Like, is this going to impact us for further weeks? To which she said, yeah, this is the last weekend coming up. They've got a show Friday night and Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, and then it's all yours again. And so I said, that's great, thank you. And then she emailed back later in the day and said, oh, Jacques, by the way, you should take your girls to see the show, to see the play. I said, well, what show is it? She said, they would love it. It's Annie, the musical. And I was like, oh, my goodness, Annie, woohoo! Not because I'm a musical guy, okay? I don't do musicals very well, but my kids eat Annie up. Like, they love Annie. And I'm pretty sure it's because they resonate with the storyline with Lily, Mac, and Thad. And so what they've seen both of the movies, the old, the new. They know all of the songs. They've memorized the lyrics. It's what they play all day long at our house. They play Annie. They throw the littles on the ground. One of them, like the lady who runs, dominates them, and one of them's Annie, and so this is what my kids do. So now I know all the songs, and I know all the lyrics to this, but I thought, man, we're going to the show. And so I thought on Saturday I'm going to surprise them, right? 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to see Annie, and this is going to be great. And I'm going to be the father who would sacrifice his dignity to go watch this done musical. And so this is going to be incredible. And so, but I love to surprise them, so like I'm not going to tell them. So they get up Saturday morning, they say the first thing they always do, Papa, what are we going to do today that's fun, right? And I'm like, just go away, and we'll do something fun, just trust me, right? 2 hours later, Papa, can we go swimming? Can we have a friend over? Can we do that? No, just like shut up and go bug someone else. And we'll do something fun, I promise, right? And so finally 1 o'clock comes along. I'm like, all right, everybody in the car, we're going. Boom, boom, boom. You know the story. It is on, right? And they're fighting for the front seat the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to get there early, right? Because like I wanted front row seats for this, and the kids are going to freak out. And so we get in the van, like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Pop, I said, just can it? I just promise you it'll be the coolest thing you've ever done. Okay, Pop, so we leave our house, we're driving down Linton Hall Road, we turn on Limestone, and we pull into what to them, it didn't hit me till then, is Gateway Bible Church, right? And Dryden's like, Papa, church on Saturday? And I said, sweetheart, I promise you, this is so much better than church. You're not going to believe. No, I didn't say that. Like, obviously, I'm a pastor, right? I just thought it. I didn't say it. No, I'm just kidding. It was a musical. Remember? So anyways, but I'm so excited. I'm like, get out of the car. We get the stroller out the oxygen tank, and I've got the 5 kids, and we roll in there because Emily had to do something at George Mason, or she would have loved to be in there. So it was me and this kids, and we walk in. Everybody's looking like, think this guy's unequipped for this. They have no idea what I can do. And so we will in there, and we're in the stroller, and we walk in. There's already a line of like 50 people. Right? I'm like, So we walk in there, and the girls see the posters, right? And they see the actors and actresses walking around, and it hits them what's going on. And they're like doing the little girl thing, and hugs and all that kind of stuff. That I saw some of you do that when you saw old friends today, so don't make fun of them. And so I'm like, this is great, and that's when it hits me. Oh my goodness. I bet you they only take cash. And I look into my wallet. I have $7 on me. It's $8 a ticket. I'm like, no. And then it hits me, no, this is 2015. They've got to have debit, right? So I said, girls, just stay right here. And I went to the front of the line. I apologized to the people. I said, I'm not cutting in. And then I went up there. I'm like, lady, friend, woman, thing. You take debit cards. I'm like willing it to her. You do, right? Like it was almost like a threat with me. Like you take, because I've got the girls back there and I see their faces and I can't let them down. And she looks at me. She's like, I'm sorry. It's cash or check. I was like, I have like $7. And there's no way my wife's going to let me have a checkbook. So like I've got nothing. And so I'm like, what do I do? I'm freaking out. I'll say, can I go to 7-Eleven after the show? I'll race back here. I'll pay you then. Will you still be here? You know, I'm a pastor here, right? Like that gets you what, right? So like I'm trying to convince this lady to let us in the show. And like just then, this woman comes from behind, puts a $50 bill on the counter. She Agatha Sunes all over us. Right there, and I'm looking at this thing, and she says, I want to treat this family to the musical. In my heart, you know, I was dancing. I was like, woo! Emily, if she was there, would have been horrified. Like, I'm so embarrassed. Not me. My thought was, we just got in. For free! That means I have $7 for snacks. Yeah, baby! That's what I'm doing from now on. That's my new strategy, right? So we get in there, and so I didn't get a lot of time to talk to the lady that did that for me. I did thank her and tried to give her a gateway card, but she was already back in line. But here's the point. I don't know, because I didn't talk to her long enough. I didn't get into her faith background and asked if she knew Jesus or does she have a church that she attends, any of that stuff. But I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure from what I saw and how visible it was and how Matthew 5 and Galatians 5:22 it was, this woman knows Jesus. Because that's what Agatha Sune does. What are you doing on behalf of others? By the way, we have these cards that we hand out all the time. Join us for coffee, stay for worship, you've seen them. We've asked you to hand them to your neighbors and friends because we think they're kind of cool. Here's what I promise you. On their own, they're pretty useless. And they're cute. You know, they have a nice slogan. But they're powerless. Combined with Agatha Sune, they might be the most dangerous thing that you have in your house.